Most people remember Troy for its spectacular battles, legendary duels, and the unforgettable fight between Achilles and Hector. It's easy to see why. The film delivers everything we expect from an epic: massive armies, heroic warriors, political intrigue, and breathtaking action. But beneath all the swords and warfare lies a much deeper story. Troy isn't really about winning a war. It's about what human beings are willing to sacrifice to become immortal, not physically, but through memory. Directed by Wolfgang Peterson and starring Brad Pitt as Achilles, the film explores timeless questions about pride, honor, love, destiny, revenge, and legacy. Every major character believes they are fighting for something meaningful, but by the end of the story, we begin to wonder whether any victory can justify the price that was paid. One of the earliest conversations in the movie reveals Achilles' entire philosophy. Before sailing to Troy, his mother tells him that if he stays home, he will live a long life, have children, and die peacefully. But history will forget him. If he goes to Troy, he will die young, but his name will live forever. This is not simply a choice between life and death. It's a choice between comfort and meaning. Achilles chooses glory. Throughout the movie, he repeatedly says that kings fight for power, but he fights because future generations will remember his name. This reflects one of the humanity's oldest desires. Most people don't fear death itself, they fear being forgotten. Achilles believes that immortality is not found in the body, but in reputation. The film asks a question that remains relevant today. How much of our ambition comes from the desire to accomplish something, and how much comes from the desire to be remembered? If Achilles represents ambition, Hector represents responsibility. One of my favorite scenes occurs when Hector removes his armor and spends time with his wife Andromache and their son before returning to battle. Unlike Achilles, Hector has no interest in becoming a legend. He fights because he believes protecting his family and his people is his responsibility. Even when he knows he may lose against Achilles, he walks outside the gates of Troy because he refuses to let others die in his place. The contrast between two warriors is fascinating. Achilles fights to create history. Hector fights to preserve home. Neither man is portrayed as completely right or completely wrong. The film allows us to decide which philosophy we admire more. Everything begins because Paris falls in love with Helen. Many people dismiss Paris as weak or irresponsible, but philosophically he represents another timeless human conflict, the conflict between personal happiness and collective responsibility. Paris chose love over political stability. His private decision becomes a public catastrophe. The film reminds us that history is often shaped not by grand strategies, but by deeply personal choices. One person's desire can alter the fate of entire civilizations. Agamemnon may appear to be film's primary villain, but he represents something much larger than one evil king. He symbolizes unlimited ambition. Notice that Agamemnon is never satisfied. He conquers one kingdom and immediately seeks another. Even after assembling the greatest army in Greece, he continues searching for more land, more wealth, and more influence. This reflects one of the history's oldest truths. Power rarely satisfies those who seek it. Instead, it expands their appetite. The film quietly asks whether conquest is truly enough, or whether ambition simply creates an endless cycle of wanting more. The duel between Hector and Achilles is often remembered as one of cinema's greatest fight scenes, but philosophically, it's much more than that. Achilles is physically superior. Everyone, including Hector, knows this, yet Hector still chooses to fight. Why? Because courage isn't confidence. Courage is acting despite knowing the likely outcome. This transforms Hector into something greater than a warrior. He becomes a symbol of moral courage. Achilles wins the battle, but Hector wins the audience respect. The movie suggests that greatness is measured not only by victory but also by character. One of the film's turning points occurs when Patroclus wears Achilles' armor and enters the battlefield. He hopes to inspire the Greek army. Instead, he is killed by Hector. This moment changes everything. Achilles' pursuit of glory suddenly becomes personal grief. Until this point, Achilles treats war almost like a game. After Patroclus dies, he finally experiences the true cost of violence. The film suggests that war remains abstract until loss becomes personal. Only then do we understand what has truly been sacrificed. Perhaps the greatest scene in the entire movie contains no battle at all. King Priam secretly enters the Greek camp to ask Achilles for Hector's body. He kneels before the man who killed his son. Achilles could easily refuse. Instead, something extraordinary happens. For the first time, Achilles stops seeing Hector as an enemy. He sees himself as someone's son, someone's husband, and someone's father. Priam reminds Achilles of his own father, waiting for him back home. This scene completely transforms Achilles. Until this moment, glory has been his greatest ambition. Now compassion becomes more important than victory. The film suggests that empathy has the power to accomplish what violence never can. The Trojan horse is perhaps the most famous symbol in ancient literature. For 10 years, armies failed to conquer Troy through force. The city falls when the Greeks abandon brute strength and rely on strategy. The horse represents one of history's greatest lessons. Not every problem can be solved through power. Sometimes intelligence succeeds where violence fails. But the horse also carries another message. The greatest dangers often arrive disguised as gifts. The Trojans celebrate what they believe is victory. In reality, they are welcoming destruction in their own city. The film reminds us to question appearances before accepting them as truth. Although the story takes place thousands of years ago, every major conflict still exists today. People still sacrifice relationships for ambition. Nations still fight over pride. Leaders still pursue power without considering its consequences. Families still suffer because of decisions made by those in authority. Troy survives because it understands something timeless. Technology changes, weapons change, civilizations change, human nature changes very little. If I had to summarize Troy in one sentence, it would be this. The desire to be remembered can inspire greatness, but it can also destroy everything we love. Every major character seeks immortality in a different way. Achilles wants glory. Agamemnon wants power. Paris wants love. Hector wants peace. Priam wants his family. The tragedy is that none of them receives everything they hoped for. The film reminds us that every choice carries a cost. The question is whether that cost is worth paying. Troy is much more than an action epic. It is a story about ambition, honor, family, sacrifice, and the fragile line between heroism and pride. Its battles are spectacular, its performances are unforgettable, but its greatest achievement is forcing us to ask what kind of legacy we want to leave behind. Will people remember us because we conquered others, or because we protected those who loved? For me, Troy remains one of the greatest historical epics ever made, not because of its scale, but because of its understanding of the human heart. If you haven't watched Troy in years, watch it again. This time, don't just watch the battles, watch the choices, because that's where the real story is. If this video gave you a new perspective on Troy, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who do you think was the true hero of the film? Achilles, Hector, or King Priam? Was greatness defined by glory, by courage, or by compassion? Let me know in the comments. Some of the best discussions begin where the movie ends. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Until the next video, keep watching, keep questioning and keep discovering the stories behind the stories.